Alrighty, good afternoon to you guys all here. It is Tuesday, March 25th, 2025. Hope you guys are all doing well out there this lovely, fine evening. We got a lot to talk about in the weather world today. We've got the potential for some flash flooding down in Texas over this next 7-day period. We've got the threat for multiple days of severe weather, including potential for a significant severe weather event as we go towards Sunday of this following end of the week, and a very, very active approach to potentially April as we do kick off the peak tornado season here in the next couple of weeks to next month or two. So, a lot to talk about. We've also got a very rare tornado risk that could unfold across Washington State and Oregon. I know I'm saying that correctly. Washington State and Oregon tomorrow for severe weather, which we will be in coverage mode. It's not very often we get those severe weather winds up there, and we've actually got a potential for an elevated tornado risk that could develop up in those regions. So we're going to break all that down for you guys today and talk about in general what we're going to be seeing over the next couple of days and get you all ready and out the door and ready for the rest of the week here. So we'll kind of dive into that here. And what you guys can see on your screen is two different things. We've got a ridge that is set up over here. Very, very gorgeous, beautiful weather ongoing for majority of the western and central United States. Due to that ridge being in place over here, we do have an upper level northwesterly flow that's continuing to fuel, kind of streaming across the top of that ridge here. You typically get these when you get like an omega block pattern during the summertime, etc. And we kind of have that slightly in present here. I do also want to pay attention to the southern stream that's ongoing down here into portions of the West Pacific. This is actually going to be giving us moisture for thunderstorms and rainfall across the southern portions of Texas as we go through the next 72 hours to 5-day range here. Really, I should say 3 to 5 day range at this point. We're also will be a wind and hail threat going into the day 3 outlook for severe weather, and we'll talk about that here in a minute. But just lots of things going on with our atmosphere, continuing to see a northwesterly flow here. Very cool temperatures, going to be starting to warm up as that ridge pushes its way to the north here into the Ohio Valley and into the Midwest. So we're going to talk about that here and kind of give you guys a brief rundown on what we're going to be seeing here. We'll go ahead and start out with the Storm Prediction Center and what we've got going on with severe weather starting today. And we do actually have a low-end tornado risk that is, or not a tornado risk, a wind and hail threat that is present today in portions of Oklahoma and into northern and central Texas there. And we've also got one down here in Florida for the rest of that front that is coming through that we saw severe weather with yesterday. Both are 5% and 5% wind and hail threats. I swear I cannot talk today for you guys. I'm sorry about that. But we both have a 5% and a 5% wind and hail threat today, and less than 2% tornado risk for both areas today. So this is not going to be a tornado-driven event. This is going to be a wind and hail threat for both regions here. We'll get to the timing on that here again in just a second. But once again, going to be seeing less than 2% tornado risk, not 0, but less than 2%, wind threat at 5 and hail threat at 5 for both regions there. And it's going to be due to afternoon heating. The atmosphere is going to heat up, and then as the sun sets, those storms will fire off and will allow for a couple of wind and hail storms to develop. Now, this is tomorrow's risk zone. I want to talk about this because currently right now SPC does not have a designated 2% tornado risk. We know that there is one there given what the models are showing us as just a weather enthusiast and meteorology student. That's something that we look at. And I do think SPC either upgrades to a slight risk by the time this event gets here due to that elevated tornado risk, wind and hail threat, or they just add a 2% and say, hey, we've got a chance for isolated tornadoes here. This is going to be the area that we're going to be watching for here in Washington State and Oregon going into tomorrow afternoon. We are going to go live for this event because it's such a unique event, and I do want to watch this unfold and keep everybody safe and aware, especially up there in the Northwestern Pacific as that atmospheric river moves in. But right now, this is going to actually update here in about 30 minutes, so I will put in the comment section on this video what the update is if anything does change. If not, we'll see it in the next video tomorrow. But basically right now, wind and hail threat are going to be 5% on both and then less than 2% tornado risk. We'll have to watch for that conditional tornado risk there, and we'll talk about that here again in just a second. And then I do want to go ahead and go to the day 3 outlook that is also present here. We did get an added risk zone for Thursday. Once again, a hail and a wind threat going to try to organize down here into southern portions of central Texas here, as well as a heavy rainfall event that's going to develop along the east coast. We'll get to that information here again in just a second as well. General thunderstorm risk outside of that, and another dark green shaded area there for the Midwest and Ohio Valley and Missouri Valley. They're seeing the chance for wind and hail as we go into Thursday with an upper little trough that's going to move through here. So not anything really too crazy over the next really 4 to 5 days. It's what's going to happen as we go into the weekend here. And if you guys remember in yesterday's video, we talked about there being a risk zone for Saturday. Well, SPC completely dropped that risk zone. It does not longer exist. And I've talked about kind of my thoughts on why that was going to happen yesterday. And basically the reason why we don't have a risk zone present for Saturday now is because the low is going to be moving in a little bit slower. And second of all, we have a capping inversion in the atmosphere. That's basically a temperature inversion when you've got your temperature at the surface and your temperature aloft different than what your actual dew points are. When they're spread apart so far, you get what's called a cap in the atmosphere. Storms can't break that cap. They don't go severe. So basically the idea is that we're going to have two capped in an environment to see storms. If that changes, SPC could highlight that and re-go about doing that. But the big day is going to be on Sunday, and you can see this has shrunken just slightly, just a little bit, as we were mentioning from yesterday. I'm pretty sure that slight risk ended up covering into Michigan and Wisconsin at some point, and it was down here into southern Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, and the Florida Panhandle area. But that has shrunken, and that is due to confidence increasing on where that exact area of stronger severe storms are going to be at. We do think that there will be some type of enhanced risk. I think, at least personally, we could see an enhanced risk somewhere in the Ohio Valley down to the Ozarks here. That's typical of this time of the year. And with this system setting up, it looks like the stronger shear, that low-level shear, that low-level jet that we talk about, is going to be displaced right over the Ohio Valley going into Sunday's event as of right now. Now, that can change, so we'll keep you guys updated on that. But if we do get an enhanced risk, that's kind of my thoughts initially where it could happen at, just given what models are showing. I know some people could agree with me, some people won't, but that's just kind of my initial thoughts. But regardless of that, anybody in that yellow shaded area there needs to be under the gun, or a reminder to be under the gun for severe weather on Sunday. All modes of severe weather will be possible. Tornadoes, wind, and hail will all be on the table. We'll know more in detail on what that's going to be as we get closer to this event happening on Sunday. But if you're in that yellow shaded area, just be mindful the threat for significant severe weather could be on the table, and then we will have a marginal outside of that, etc., once we get closer to that day 3 range. So just something to be, be thankful of as you go, or thinking of as you go into Sunday. We also did get a day 7 update now for Monday. Typically, most times not, when you have these cold fronts that come through, they typically crash along the East Coast, and we usually get some type of isolated tornado threat, wind threat, and hail threat. This should be mostly a wind threat, at least what I'm seeing with the models. We'll have just enough destabilization in front of that cold front to give us the threat for some type of low and severe risk. So North Carolina, Virginia, getting into South Carolina, Georgia, and eastern portions of Alabama as we go through Sunday, or Monday morning into Monday afternoon, seeing the leftover remnants of this system. And then we can talk about, later on at the end of this week, what's going to happen going into the first week of April. There is a lot of discrepancy on what is going to happen. And we know that severe weather is going to get ramped up. If this weekend isn't enough, then we'll have more going into April. That's typically what's expected going into that month. I do want to briefly touch on what's going to happen for tomorrow. Given that isolated tornado risk that's going to be at play for tomorrow. And you guys can see this is what's called an atmospheric river. We typically get these big old jet streams, these troughs that move in off the Northwestern Pacific. They typically, more times not, they can cause an isolated tornado risk or two, but this is actually going to give us a pretty decent amount of surface cape. We could be looking at surface-based cape values tomorrow of 25 to 3,500 joules per kilogram, which is actually very, very significant, especially just off the mountain ranges here that we're going to have in place. So with that elevation change with height, we actually could see tornado genesis be a potential thing. That's something I'm watching very, very closely. And you guys can see as we go through tomorrow afternoon, we're going to have a couple of these little supercells that are going to fire off. And yes, I'm saying supercells in Washington State and Oregon that could pose the threat for a tornado or two, some large hail, and some damaging winds. So we're going to keep you guys updated on the situation over here. If you're definitely in these regions, have a tornado action plan in place. I'm pretty sure that's the first time I have said that in a very, very long time, if not the first time in this area. So just be aware if you're in Washington State or Oregon to have that way to have an action plan in place. But most of this will be between daytime heating tomorrow, between 2 p.m. and I would say 10 p.m. tomorrow night. Just kind of giving you guys a rough estimate here. I also want to show you guys those surface-based cape values as well, just to kind of give you guys an idea of what we're looking at in a very, very fine corridor of surface-based instability. You have the mountain ranges that sit here. That surface-based cape will move into those higher ranges, giving us that elevated tornado risk where we could get tornado genesis. And if you don't believe tornadoes can't happen in mountain ranges, oh yeah, they can. You can definitely Google that for sure. They can definitely happen in mountain ranges. Just something to kind of be also very, very mindful of. And another thing I want to really talk about that's impressive, we don't typically get dew points this high as well. We've got dew points showing mid to upper 60s and low 60s here across this region as well. So definitely supportive for a severe weather threat. And like I said, I would not be surprised if SPC goes slight risk by the time this event gets here tomorrow. Could keep it marginal due to more of a conditional risk, but I do think that a slight risk could be on the table. One more thing I do want to also show you guys is going to be that low level jet that's going to be in place. This is the 850 millibar wind with height. And you can see as we crash this thing in tomorrow afternoon, that low level jet's going to ramp up from the southwest to the north here at about 30 to 45 miles per hour, or knots, I should say. And then as that eventually moves its way out, we'll have that system continue to kind of crash into the coast there. So lots of weather happening, guys, over the next really 7 days here, and eventually going into April here. I expect a very, very active pattern really in the next little bit. And just kind of talking about our pattern in general here, what we're going to see. Well, what are we seeing right now currently? We've got, like I said, that ridge that is set up, a very strong high pressure, giving us very, very warm air moving in above that ridge and through that ridge here. We can still see that northwesterly flow that's in place. This should start to lift as we go through the next 48 hours here. Still have a low exiting the coast, or as exiting up into Canada. That gave us some disturbance weather is, I guess, the word I'll use for it, over the last couple days up in the Midwest and up towards the Great Lakes there. And that, like I said, that system, as we go through tomorrow, going to see beautiful, beautiful weather for majority of the United States today and tomorrow. And it's as we get into Thursday, things start to get a little bit more interesting. I want you guys to pay attention to two things. One, that trough that's up here. This is our main player on what's going to give us severe weather for this weekend, and then a little baby shortwave trough and an organized surface low that tries to develop down here on Thursday and Friday. And what this is going to do is it's going to turn our wind barbs out of the southeast or out of the west to east and more go southwest here, and we're going to get a plume of moisture and some decent dew points that are going to set up over Texas, western Louisiana here, western Louisiana, portions of Arkansas and southern Oklahoma that could give us a widespread thunderstorm risk zone here. I wouldn't be expecting any widespread severe weather. It would be more confined towards southern Texas that we could see that hail and wind threat potentially on the table for Wednesday. But most of this will be in the form of heavy rainfall. So some areas could see as high as 5 to 10 inches of rainfall before this week is over with down there in southern Texas, clearly more towards the coastline where those higher bands set up at. So just something to be mindful of going into the week here. And then as that system works its way east, like I said, we're still going to have that light and surface low with that troughing here. Could bring us some general thunderstorms on Saturday down here to the lower Ohio Valley, Tennessee Valley, and the deep south. And then you can see our main player that's going to give us our severe weather setup for Sunday, moving in Saturday night across the Rockies here and eventually setting up. Now, the GFS and the European model, this is the European model that I'm showing you guys today. It's a little bit still discrepant on where that low is going to track and how strong that shear is going to be. But nevertheless, I think both models are in agreement that we're going to have enough shear, enough instability, a decent amount of dew points for severe weather. It's just what are those categories going to be as we get closer to that event. So it's just something to be mindful of. We will have shear in place across the deep south, the Arklatex, the Mississippi Valley, the Missouri Valley, and the southern portions and central portions of the Ohio Valley. So if you're in those risk zones again for Sunday and Monday, be very, very mindful there. We will have what's called a positively / neutral, almost negatively tilted trough on what some of the models are showing. We'll have to wait, like I said, until we get a little bit closer to see on that, but this is going to work its way east. And then as we go into the first week of April, I expect to continue to see a very, very active pattern, if not potential for multiple significant severe weather episodes going into the first and second week of April. Still a lot of time to figure that out. We'll keep you guys updated on that situation as that unfolds. And I do want to show you guys kind of a future radar estimation here on what we could see, or a simulation on what we could see over the next 7 days here. And you can see general thunderstorms down there in Texas, general thunderstorms for Thursday's outlook there with wind and hail across Iowa and the Midwest, and then continuing to see rain. I really think that the rainfall is going to add down there. We actually do have WPC, the Weather Prediction Center, has issued a marginal and a slight risk for heavy rainfall down in southern Texas that could actually get upgraded to moderate or a little bit higher if they need to be on that, if they continue to see trends with those higher rainfall amounts. So that'll be in place for the next, 4 to 5 days down there. That system eventually works its way east, bringing rain and thunderstorms on Saturday night across the Ohio Valley. And then our main surface low gets going as it goes into Sunday morning here, seeing the threat for multiple rounds, if not a couple rounds of severe weather in the Ohio Valley. And then overnight, that's going to move its way through the southeast and eventually move the east coast out by Monday afternoon into Tuesday. And then we enter next week with a lot of uncertainty. Could see multiple rounds of severe weather, some general thunderstorms, etc. So we got a lot going on in the next couple of days, guys. And one more thing I will show you guys before we wrap this video up is going to be just that general rainfall total over the next really 7 to 10 days here. And you can see the bulk of that rainfall. Where's that going to be at? The Ohio Valley down here into these Arklatex and into the southern plains, and those higher Texas values down there, we could see anywhere from 5 to 10 inches of rainfall, maybe a little bit higher in that in some areas. So that's something we definitely need to watch for. Watch those creeks, rivers, and streams down there in Texas if you're in those areas. Other than that, a general 1 to 3 inches of rainfall through the next 7 to 10 days from the Arklatex up through the southeast and into the Ohio Valley. So that's what I've got for you guys today. Be safe out there, be weather aware, and I will see you guys in the next one.